Yeah, and people don't understand that you're really going to be very careful with those timelines because these are like etched in stone. And I've seen some agents get pretty aggressive, like with post-dated letters and all this kind of stuff. And boy, you got to be really, really careful.
Well, you have to be careful. The what you're referring to is when you're dealing with the identification notice that needs to come in. A lot of people would love to have
Yeah.
backdated notices that they slip into us, but that really can compromise not only their exchange, but all the other exchanges that a qualified intermediary is handling.
Right.
So, a bona fide qualified intermediary who follows the regulations will not accept a backdated
Right.
notice.
Because if you're working with some investors, and they may be another investor may be buying their property, then so on and so on and so on, and you get these stacked up like your air traffic control, and if one plane goes down, you're in a heap of trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's another small thing. It is fraud.
Yeah. Hello.
So-
Thank you, Tony, for pointing the obvious out here on the Real Estate Hour. But we had that issue with what it was 2 years ago, where that one title company who went out of business. And now Arexo. The good reason to use Tony is that you guys have been around for a while. You're part of Old Republic, which has been around forever, and you don't have that issue. Okay, where they had actually had funds, their clients' funds out there chasing the best return they could, and then when we had all the implosions with the financial markets, they didn't have the money.
What happened with
That was a nightmare.
with that particular company is they were chasing returns and
Right.
they were investing in what was considered at the time virtually liquid auction rate securities. But the issue was they were virtually liquid. They weren't absolutely liquid.
I hate that word virtual. Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
So what happened? Auction rate securities 2 years ago in February went illiquid, and they didn't have the funds to pay out current exchangers.
right.
So they were using new exchange funds coming in to pay out existing exchangers, and
Right.
they just kind of got caught in a bad marketplace at the same time.
Yeah, and so did a whole bunch of investors. So when you use Arexco and you use Tony, you have that stability which you really, really need. So your funds will be safe. And nowadays, that's probably a big question for a lot of investors because you see so many institutions, going under the table or ready to go under the table, and that's one of the big questions I'm sure you get asked.
It's huge, and unfortunately, I don't get asked the question nearly enough,
Really?
Mike.
Wow.
People think automatically that there are strong regulations in our industry, and there isn't.
Yeah.
So research needs to be done about the company that you're working with. With our case with Old Republic, it's a company that's been in existence for over 100 years, and
Right.
we're very conservative, and we don't chase the profit.
Right.
What we do is we ensure the security of somebody's funds and make sure that they're liquid so that they're available when somebody's
Exactly.
ready to buy
Right.
a piece of property. So, and there are other companies who have that same philosophy, but it's really important to do the due diligence to make sure that you're working with a company that works that way.
Yeah, and I would try in this case. I would get the biggest company you can, guys, because you don't
That
want
would be us.
Yeah, because when we first started doing this, we had guys that were working out of their home offices that were exchange facilitators and holding on to some funds. We're kind of going, don't think so, don't think so. But okay, so the process is that if you're going to be doing the exchange, you need to really develop a paper trail. So this is where your realtor should be really savvy and smart like I am, and know that they need to contact you at the get-go.
Well, that's hugely important, Mike.
Yeah.
You can't overemphasize that because you talk about the lady who accepted the funds into her account. I have situations where exchangers or potential exchangers were never even advised that that was an option.
Oh my gosh.
So it really has to be set up in front, and the contract needs to reflect that it's an exchange. So you do need to have an agent who understands
Right.
the verbiage that's
Yeah,
required.
And it's all about, with the IRS, it's all about paper trail. So we're going to come back and continue those thoughts with Tony Espasi. She's with Old Republic Exchange Facilitators, been in the business for many years. We won't say how many. And as many as I have. A little bit more, actually. But she looks a lot better than I do, too, right, Alan? And okay, we're here with Alan Fitch. We're actually filming this right now. We will be posting this on YouTube. We'll take a break, come back after the news. This is Mike Kelly. It's the Real Estate Hour, and it's Sunday. We're talking tax-deferred exchanges, and this is IRS code 1031. It's been around for a long time. It's since when I started in the business, we used to have the simultaneous closes and all that kind of stuff. That's gone away. So now we're in tax deferred land, and we're talking about the mechanics of doing this, and then now we're talking about the paper trail. So when your agent starts, the first thing they need to do is if they're going to be considering doing the exchange on a property, you need to get a paper trail. And how you do that is you put that into the multiple listing to begin with. So you can show the IRS that it was our intent originally at the get-go to get this thing into a tax-deferred exchange. Now, when they contact you, we talked about how that if they sell the property, they need to have language within the contract, right?
Yes, they do.
And how would that language go? Can you just give me a...
Well, the addendum that we provide
Right.
is was written by attorneys and is very extensive. There's also the CAR form of addendum that is
That's the California
perfectly
Association
okay.
of Realtors, right?
Bottom line, what it needs to say is that the buyer understands that it is the intent of the seller to effect a Section 1031 tax-deferred
Right.
exchange, and that they're willing to cooperate.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and that's, in simple terms, that's what you need to have in there.
Right, usually at no cost to buyer.
No cost to them, no expense,
Yeah.
and no liability.
Right, in this marketplace, Tony, it's so hard to get buyers into single-family houses. If you're an investor and you're under the gun and you're trying to buy single families out of an exchange, that is extremely daunting. So anybody who's out there considering, the strategy we discussed before about selling, say, a large property, then, try to put them into maybe 10 single families, man, you better have a long escrow on your other one because it's going to take you forever to dig up those properties. Now, the question, Tony, I have, okay, now, if you're doing the exchange and you say you're going into 5 single families, now, if I find one right away and I get an offer accepted, all right, and I'm trying to do 4 others. So as soon as that one offer is accepted, does the 45 days kick in for all the rest of the timelines that I'm in?
Well, the timeline again starts when escrow closes on the property that's being sold.
Right.
So it doesn't matter when you identify.
So as long as I have the property I'm going to relinquish that I'm selling still in escrow, that 45 days isn't kicking until I close that deal.
That's correct. So
Okay, that's
having
good.
a cooperative buyer in that circumstance
Yeah.
is paramount, and sometimes a price concession is worth having a cooperative buyer.
Gotcha. Yeah, make it worth their while to stick around and help you out. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So then the mechanics. So we have the language. And the language basically states that we're going to be using you folks. Okay. We close the transaction. We bring the money to you. The money's wired to your account. Okay. And then you hold on to that money. All right. And then when we're ready to exchange, okay, we basically find our property we wish to exchange into. That in turn also goes into the mix. So you're kind of handling both escrows.
Well, we don't actually handle the escrow. What happens actually in a transaction is that we are assigned in as the seller of the property
Right.
in the place of the person who wants to do the exchange. So we become the technical seller on the property.
Right.
We have an exchange agreement with the seller that says that in exchange for us being named as the seller and us receiving the proceeds of sale as our proceeds of sale,
right.
that we're going to step in when they find the property or properties that they want to buy. We're going to be the buyer on that side.
Right.
We're going to bring in the money. We're going to provide all the documentation to both transactions. But we're remote from the escrow,
Right.
actually.
Okay. And that's because the seller cannot touch that money. That's
Correct.
just for the IRS. So you guys are the ones that are kind of handling for him. Then you're going to bring it in. You're basically kind of like a straw holder of that money just for the IRS purposes.
Right.
Okay. So that's the mechanics of it. So but the thing is, folks, you really need from the get-go make sure you know what you're doing about it. You can, I guess, change horses in the middle of the stream, but you better be very careful with that.
Well, I think what's really important is for people to do the research, either before
Right.
or at the time that they're listing the
Right,
property so
right.
that they really understand what the requirements are and they can create a great strategy with their real estate professional
Right.
to have a successful completion, because the timelines are challenging and finding properties nowadays can be challenging.
Yeah, very, very much so, very much so. So you really got to really time it, especially in this market, you guys, and because last thing you want to do is blow your client's, IRS status. That could be disastrous because that's big time tax liabilities, and we've seen it unfortunately happen.